Oh yeah. Good Lord, wrestle for me. Hello and welcome to the podcast of convenience. Today we have 4 people here with me. Now I'm one of those people, so we have 3 people here with me. I'm Alex, and I have Adam here with me. Adam?
Yo.
And then also Hayden.
Hey.
And Woof.
Yo.
First thing we've got to talk about is the news, which there is mainly one bit of news to do with everything Guild Wars related, which is the new Beta Weekend 3.
I think we're all looking forward to it.
Well, it's the first time we've actually been able to play in a while.
Yeah,
to get that fix.
Hopefully we'll be able to play it better than last betas, you know?
Yeah.
Just playing Guild Wars 1 again doesn't really cut it anymore.
No.
Well, any of you would know about this, of course.
Now, Woof here being our resident Guild Wars 1 veteran.
Resident Guild Wars 1 lore nerd.
Well, hardly.
I suppose you haven't had much time playing it recently, so you've probably forgotten things.
I've been playing it a bit recently. Not that it's particularly relevant, but the update to 7 Heroes just means that you can do so much more easily than you were ever supposed to do it.
Well, as I understand it, the game is kind of devoid of the players that it once had, so you're kind of reliant on those NPCs?
If you're trying to progress in the game, it's just impossible without heroes, well, you can use henchmen, but having overpowered hero builds is just so much easier. There are only a few places where there are just a load of players, and that's mainly American districts and the main cities.
Yeah, I think a lot of Guild Wars players are just looking forward to Guild Wars 2 now. I know I can't imagine going back.
Obviously, there's quite a large chunk of differences between the two.
A large chunk.
It feels like a Guild Wars game. The aesthetic particularly makes it feel like a Guild Wars game.
Yeah, with that horrible optimization in the first beta, you mean?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Guild Wars 1's engine is incredibly good.
I find it interesting that you say that when they've got the new painterly style aesthetic, which I really like, though the aesthetic of the first game I didn't really like the look of. It did look a bit uninspired.
It was designed to look realistic to some degree.
To me, the realism and uninspired are synonymous.
Well, we can always argue about that later.
Although, realism in a fantasy setting is always a fun thing. Anyway, yes, we have got another thing to discuss, which is the almost the patch notes, I want to say, because that's what I'm used to calling them, but the changes for the new beta weekend.
Well, yeah, as well, I'm just going to note that this podcast is going to have regular features in it, such as, patch notes, general news, what we've been doing. So there will be stuff that is going to be consistent throughout them all. So should we start off with, there aren't any patch notes as such because of, lack of game. So we'll just have to, fill that in with perhaps the previous betas right now.
Well, some of the stuff they said is going to change is World v World has been completely rebalanced. Arenas that say quite pleased with how they've changed it too. They haven't been very specific there.
Yeah, we do know a couple of things, like the addition of the sentries, are they called? Yes, sentries.
Oh, them. Do you mean, are they the solo player things?
They are like almost a PvE element of PvP, so rather than the legendary guardians, which we had before, taking up quite a few places, they've got these sentries now, which are NPCs, but they're worth points, and they guard places that are also worth points.
But they're for solo players as well, aren't they? It's just like, you go around on your own, try and take one down, but
well,
that
the thing
seems
is
a bit weird.
That if you think of our previous experiences, if you can imagine like a sentry guarding a camp, maybe as a solo player you manage to pull the sentry out and take him down, but that isn't even that useful if you manage to pull it off. I'd say that it's all meant to be a group experience.
Yeah. What I found a couple of times is that I was on my own back before I went. On the first server I was on, it was one server had wiped out everything, and I'm pretty certain that this is not an isolated experience.
Yeah.
And all I could do was just go in on my relatively low level character, of course, and I just realised there was nothing I could do.
Well, they've said on release that they're going to try and make sure that isn't a major issue by having each of the World v Worlds reshuffle every 24 hours until they've decided that they're quite well balanced before going into the 2-week format we're expecting them to go into.
Yeah, well, Wolf brings up 2 points, I think, that I found, which was that, number one, it could quite easily happen that one team would dominate, and even though that could change at some points, when a team starts dominating, people start not wanting to play World vs. World because they basically rage quit it. And then it becomes a case of, we can't get more people, we can never fight back.
Yeah, they're like little quiet servers that just have loads of people playing through the campaign almost. Don't jump into World v World. Those worlds get hit the worst, don't they?
Well, I think there's also servers like ones we've been on where there's tons of people who want to play the World versus World and then feel like they're not getting anywhere, so just go play other things.
And we also found that even a little bit of organisation, just 4 people on Mumble, can lead the Zerg. And it helps massively.
Yeah. One thing that I think we found in terms of tactics was that there was 2 types of group which were effective. So the Zerg, so just 60 plus people all attacking a keep, you're going to break through just by sheer numbers. But also, if you have a group of 5 people, you can quite easily work around as a strike team. And when there's 2 Zergs meet each other, they'll just go at it for 20 minutes or more. If you just slip 5 people away, your Zerg might end up losing, but the other Zerg have been distracted so long that the strike team could have taken so many camps.
I have a feeling having good organisation would really bring one of the sides forward in World v World.
Sometimes people use the team chat. I'm glad that the team chat exists, but I found a lot of people didn't use it, or when they did, it wasn't really for discussion as much as yelling an order and then no one replying. I think when guilds are a bigger thing, I think that'll make it better.
The guild, some of the guild stuff has been implemented in World v World now, hasn't it?
Apparently that was in a while ago, but it's hard to notice, really.
Well, is that the boost that you get in World v World, or is it was it guild keeps or something?
Yeah,
both actually, because one leads to the other. The guild keeps give so the entire server gets bonuses related to what World v World is looking like. But if you're in the guild that has taken a keep and is contributing a lot, then you get other benefits,
which will hopefully be us.
There were 5 or 6 of us, last time who were doing stuff in World v World, and we didn't really notice anything.
Yeah, I think if we had 30 of us in a guild, you could really do some damage.
I imagine, but then again,
yeah, definitely.
You could have other people on the other side potentially doing it cleverly and then getting some really interesting outcomes there.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to be really interesting.
Massive fights. Big coordinated thing. I mean, I can see there going to be guilds holding guild keeps, and then there'll be other guilds that just you know what, we don't want to hold anything. We're going to band together, kind of like pirates, almost taking down all these places. That'd
You're
be
suggesting
awesome.
Is basically Eve in a fantasy setting.
It does have a lot of similarities to Eve does World vs. World, but one thing that I found myself doing was, because the exact situation for our server was a team dominating and then us taking back a few things. When we'd taken back those things, I got very possessive and sunk all my money into getting the upgrades so that I could keep those keeps.
Well, yeah, we did take 2 hours to capture the one place.
All I'm going to say is that Alone of Reach will never stop kicking my ass. I mean, seriously, it kicked my ass in Guild Wars 1, and now we're kicking our ass in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah,
hopefully the 24-hour balance shifting will fix a lot of the issues.
Hopefully.
Although I don't know whether during that time you'd want to play a lot of World vs. World in order to like prove how good you are, or not play at all, so they put you with another bad server and then suddenly go all out.
But then you'd get shifted up quite quickly if you did really well. You'd get 2 weeks of glory, and then after that, just shoot up the rankings.
Well, not this. Maybe you would, but then maybe it would bring us up to a correct level, or maybe the settings would we would just end up yo-yoing backwards and forwards from winning everything to getting crushed.
Yeah, I do think we should tell people that honesty is the best policy, and the Knights of Convenience support honesty as long as it is convenient.
So when it becomes inconvenient for us to be honest, we keep being honest.
Yeah, exactly.
We find a more convenient truth.
That's true.
There are plenty of other things that have changed in this weekend's event. One thing that I'd like to bring up is the deleting of characters, because I'd like to speculate that the characters being deleted are so they can simulate the start of the game.
But
wouldn't it be more to do with testing the Asura and the Sylvari?
I disagree, because people would have played them anyway, because by the sounds of it, those are the most popular races in terms of what people want. Humans just going to be the most played anyway, we know that, but people really wanted to play those starting areas. Just lore perspective, they looked amazing. But I think they deleted all the characters so that they can simulate the Zerg that always happens when a new MMO starts or there's a new expansion.
One of the things that they've done, which is quite interesting, is you can buy gems in the store. The store's completely working now. If you bought 3,000 gems on Beta Weekend 3 and then spent 3,000 gems on all sorts of stuff, on release you'll get all the gems which you spent back, so you'd have 3,000 gems back in your account, ready to spend again.
Have you heard about the pricing for gems, though?
I don't know how they work. How do they work?
We don't know the pound sterling prices, but the euros prices seem to have been leaked, and they seem quite pricey, really. So 800 gems, which hopefully people can remember how much gems things cost. I believe you got 2,000 just for logging in.
Yeah.
800 gems would set you back €10.
Wow, that's quite a fair amount, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. And some people are annoyed by this, but personally, I'm not too annoyed because I wasn't planning to buy any gems at the start.
No, I was, but not at the start. I mean, I want to buy something because it's a bit weird not having a subscription, so that's kind of how I'll not make up for it, but I want them to take my money.
You feel that you should pay them for the experience at a certain point.
I think exactly. You never played Guild Wars 1.
The thing I'll most likely end up buying are some extra character slots. I'm not sure how much they cost each.
Well, we're going to have 5 character slots. Is that not enough?
Eventually, we might end up wanting more.
That's in a very long time, though. Maybe expansions will add new ones or something.
Yeah, because one of the things that is also being speculated by people is that the 5 character slots because of the 5 races, and the stories are because of the races. Which race you choose determines your story at the start. So in other expansions, if new races were added, potentially new character slots would be as well.
Yeah, potentially.
In Guild Wars 1, sorry to keep going back to Guild Wars 1.
I think this is relevant.
Every new campaign that brought new classes, which was the main difference, of course, with only having one race. I started off with 4 when I just had prophecies, then it went up to 6, and now it's at 8 with both of the expansions.
So the expansions gave you those slots?
The expansions gave those slots in the previous game, just with the expansion.
I wouldn't be surprised if they increase the character slots at a later date.
Could you also buy character slots in Guild Wars 1? That's interesting.
You could, but this was when they implemented the shop later on.
I see. So I think it would be a fair assumption to say they'd do a similar thing.
I would hope so. I think a lot of people would appreciate it.
In terms of ArenaNet's policies, this is the first time that we've got something that could be considered dickish. Like everything else so far has been really reasonable with how the microtransactions work.
It's all cosmetic, isn't it?
Yeah. But personally, my plan was always to reach like the end game stuff, and at that point I'd probably want the gems that I can change the look of items, so I'd probably buy some gems to do that then.
Yeah, or what else can you get with the gems?
Dies, mini
buffs.
pets.
Like XP amount buff. It's convenience things.
Yeah, though, on my first character I don't think I'd be that worried about the XP buff.
No, not my first character, yeah.
On alts I can see using it.
I don't know, because I found that the experience felt really tight.
It was very tight, yeah.
It never felt comfortable, that I felt like I was getting enough experience to continue leveling without some form of grinding or redoing heart quests.
You can't redo heart quests.
Then
event quests. Redoing event quests.
Even.
I have a feeling you have to, like, actually, the heart quests are only there to make you go in a direction of event quests. Like, if you come across a new event quest, I think the game's tuned that you go to that new event quest and then go back to doing the heart.
Here is the thing that they actually brought up in the live stream, which was, the live stream last week after ArenaNet created a Twitch account, and they did basically a test of a little Q&A. And one of the problems I felt with the game was that the heart quests, I ended up doing a lot more heart quests than I did events, because they were more reliable for experience, and in some cases more fun. But they did get me to see the world and go out to places, and it seems like that's the point. And something they mentioned was that as you level up, heart quests are slowly going to be phased out. So they could be considered like the traditional questing part of the game. Yeah. But as you get to higher level areas, there'll start to be less and less heart quests, and it'll be more event focused, because I think they believe that the events are like hard to get your mind to wrap your mind around.
It does require a different mindset compared to traditional MMOs.
What I felt is that I was being forced to visit everywhere. And they're adding the vistas in this weekend, and that just feels like another way of forcing me to go everywhere.
Yeah, I did feel
if I want to level at a decent... If I want to level efficiently, I feel like I'm forced to do everything. And I can't miss anything, otherwise I will fall behind and struggle more.
Well, one thing that I found was there's a lot of ways to get experience. Like exploring areas, like exploring Lion's Arch got me a level, I think, possibly more than that.
Half of level 16 looking around, I can't remember what the human city is called.
Just
getting every single waypoint and area in that.
Yeah,
completing that.
I did that.
Which was like surprisingly fun to actually do, like looking around the city and seeing everything.
I just loved looking at all the new statues for the gods.
There are really good lore snippets.
But I do agree that it did feel a bit forced in Holbrack, like running around to get all the little points that I get, like the 15 out of 15 or however many it was. But I did stumble across some really interesting things, like the statue of Owl. How about how he's like wiped out and he can't feel. There's nothing coming from the statue of it. It's just so it was worth it, really. Although it did feel a bit forced. It's more encouragement than being forced, though.
But is it better to come across it by accident, or to come across it because a quest brought you near it?
I wouldn't have seen it otherwise, actually.
Yeah, how awesome would it have been if you'd just gone over there, just gone over there and just found this statue for one of the dead nature spirit, for a dead nature spirit?
I mean, that would have been pretty cool, but yeah, I suppose it did make me a bit angry, the fact that it had been completely wiped out.
I did find things, when I was doing Holbright, the most interesting thing I found was the Sons of Svarnir, and I hadn't actually heard about this little lore snippet, but since each of the races have like an evil faction which will come up in their story recurringly, the Norns one, the Sons of Svarnir, they're actually welcome in Holbrack. Although they are the evil faction and they're working against the general interests of the Norn, they're still Norn, so they're welcome to come in and out the city as they please.
Yeah, it's weird since aren't they your main starting enemy?
Yeah, you're introduced very quickly that these are the bad guys and these are like the stormtroopers that you just kill over and over.
Yeah, because they trap the wolves, actually. Is it the
There is
wolf
nothing.
clubs?
Yeah.
There is nothing evil about the Ascalonians who want to kill Char. I can agree with them wholeheartedly.
Which Ascalonians? The ones in Guild Wars 1?
No, the enemy race to the humans. The enemy group to the humans.
Why do they hate them?
Because the Char might have kicked them out of their home place.
Oh, okay.
And burned and murdered and done a lot of bad things to Ascalon.
So super happy fun times.
Basically, killing Char is one of the best feelings in Guild Wars 1.
Chazukoing them.
No, I just splinter barrage. 3 guesses to Guild Wars 1 veterans which class I play in Guild Wars 2.
We don't care. I'm joking. But, yeah, I know what you will like. Keg Brawl.
Lots of burly Norns wrestling each other while spilling mead.
It's like rugby, except you can unequip all your armour, so you'll be naked doing it.
Naked
And
rugby.
it's got beer. The ball is a keg. It's almost like that, run into the other side to try and you
I
try
kind
and
of
take
want to
down the
know
other
how
team.
the spectator system works, because I want to be sat on the side throwing oil over the people and watching.
But do you mean the kind of oil that would burn, or
No,
the other
just
kind?
some baby oil, chucking it over. Oh yeah, good Norn, wrestle for me.
But they're Norn. Why is there still beer in the keg?
There is
that,
actually
did
a
it?
mechanic. You can spill a bit of the keg and it snares people.
Why would it slow it? Is it like really sticky beer?
That's the only reason I can think of, yes.
Or it just burns
Well,
straight
you're an
through the
ice
ice?
already.
Do they have it
You're an
like,
ice already, it just makes the ice more slippy.
No, it melts clean through the ice. It's like acid.
So they drink acid and they're so burly that it's fine.
Exactly.
only the Chars can survive it? Any other race would die due to
Yeah, it's like a human goes, oh, can I have some mead? Oh, if you're sure. Takes a swig and his jaw melts off.
He tries to pour it in like a normal cup. Cup's gone. There's nothing there.
it just goes through the table and then through the ground and through the
Tries to
various
put it in
floors.
his teacup.
And then about 20 years later, someone in Cantha gets burnt in the foot.
Though we don't know what the centre of Tyria, the planet, we don't know what the centre of it is made out of.
We don't know if we've seen the entire planet though, do we?
We have.
We
have
have.
now. Is this new or?
Yeah, have you not heard about this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, quite a lot of people have been data mining the client. The newest updates brought the end stuff, so I will warn, if you start searching for this, there is spoilers. But something that they found was a globe that someone had built, and there was actually like the texture for it, so just a flat thing, and it showed the entire planet of Tyria, which we'd never seen before.
How
But
much of
this is not necessarily canon because it's found by data mining.
Yes. And it's even quite possible that the person who made it was wrong.
Yes. For example, the Elon River, it shows that the Crystal Desert now has a massive river threat going through it, which means the Elon River, the river going through Alona, has been dammed. And yet there are some other weird effects. For example, the Jade Sea in Cantha isn't shown as a sea, even though it should have become a sea after Shiro's death back in Guild Wars 1. There are loads of weird inconsistencies with what it shows. But the fact that we have a load of other islands beyond the 3 continents that we already know is really interesting.
One
what
of
does
the
that mean
things,
for the next expansions and content packs?
well, that's an interesting thing because of the way that the expansions worked in Guild Wars 1, adding new continents, the way that they're doing it in that they're just selling games and then expansions, continents would make sense to be the new way of giving out content. But would they do the same continents or new ones?
Well, they've
Possibly
possibly given
a mix of
themselves the possibility of going to new ones.
Because I think it would be interesting to go to Cantha and Alona 250 years later, but having exactly the same structure of us going to the continents, that would also seem boring.
It might give you a choice. You could perhaps give you an old one and a new one.
Yeah, by structure, I meant the way that they release expansions and what continents were in expansions.
If I was to guess, I'd guess that they'd add some new continents and would return to some of the older continents.
I actually think like doing an expansion with a new continent and then doing one that had both of the old ones in, like a throwback expansion, that could work.
Potentially,
It would be interesting to see what they did with the map, but sure, I'd be up for that.
It's possible they could have it where they had the same level range and you got a choice of which one to go to.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They just like, you can do one or the other. You can do both, obviously, because that's how Guild Wars 2 works, isn't it? Leveling you down.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting. I reckon they might do that, actually.
So, well, with the size of Guild Wars 1, the explorable areas, they were quite big. Guild Wars 2, in comparison, it's actually smaller, but it's got more content. So if they were going to do the continents again, it's possible that they'd cut off areas that they used to be able to get onto because they're focusing on other areas more.
Well, it'll be quite hard turning the Jade Sea into an explorable area now, because it...
underwater.
Back to, you and your logic.
Did they mention having an underwater zone at some point? I seem to remember.
No. I remember it was a question asked in an interview whether... because one of the rumours was a third of the game was underwater, and this has some evidence because there's a certain amount of water in the game, but a third of the content isn't underwater, but a third of the world that you can explore could quite easily be underwater.
Yeah, and that next expansion, it lets you swim to the new continent.
That would actually be quite cool.
Some kind of race swimming to the new continent.
Because it only takes ships 2 weeks to get there.
Yeah, just spend 6 months holding W.
Why would you hold W? Why don't you just get a weight or something, put it on W, and just go away for
auto run?
Yeah, there is an auto run.
Yeah, that works as well.
Auto swim.
Have you guys done much of the underwater combat?
No, I hated it. Personally.
I'd be interested to know people's opinions.
I've not done that much, but it seems a lot of the abilities in the underwater one, well, for Mesmers anyway, were like mixing up some of the like non-underwater weapons, like mixing up the skills for that.
Yeah.
Well, the only time I went underwater was in World v World, actually, when we were taking on there's a bridge, that goes across, you jump down to take the harbour bit. No?
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
well, there's actually the 3 places that are like that.
Yeah, people just jumped out of the water there, so I followed them back in. That's the only time, really. I don't really have any interest in going underwater, even though they've got water combat. It is good.
Well, I tried plenty of the underwater combat, and it was functional, but it was hardly as fun as the above ground stuff, because it was kind of confusing adding the third dimension to everything. If it had the same skills as the ground combat, I wouldn't have enjoyed it at all.
It is a bit overwhelming to suddenly find yourself with an extra dimension and like several new skills which you've never seen before.
It's not really the dimension that got me, it was the fact that it was an entirely different weapon than the weapon I was trying to get you good with.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Interesting. Well, by the time I'd gone underwater for the first time to do combat, I'd unlocked all the weapon skills on all of the weapons. So it was kind of refreshing when I went underwater to have something different, and it was very interesting to see how the skills interacted.
But I found that I was enjoying the land combat so much that as soon as I went back to the underwater combat, it felt much less kinetic and much slower.
Well, the one thing I found was it was hard to navigate. So there was a dynamic event where it was defending a guy, and I tabbed to find an enemy, and there was one, and then I couldn't see him. And as it turns out, he was above me, but I never thought to look there.
I've only
Nobody.
really used water combat as it's like a tool. It's again mentioned in World v World. Like, I was in a big group and we were gonna go and take out one the enemy keeps, but we all dived into the water and swum under it. So I mean, I imagine if they were on land, they wouldn't have seen us at all. So it's just a bit of cover there.
Although one thing I have used it for in World v World is presuming that very few people have got the skills unlocked. So it's like, oh, there's 3 people, I'm outnumbered, quickly jump into the water, and then they're just trying to hit me and really, like, not sure what they're doing, like fumbling with their weapons.
That's a pretty clever idea, actually.
Ganking noobs.
There is one thing that I would like a dueling system, because when I did take on people 1v1 in World v World or in PvP, it was really quite fun.
I found a lot of the fights lasting indefinitely, actually, like a Guardian versus a Mesmer, and I couldn't kill him. It really did show how good a Mesmer was, like how interesting, because I'll be hitting him, suddenly I realise that's a clone I've been hitting the whole time.
Well, there's something you can do in the game which like puts a marker over the character, and if you put it over the Mesmer, suddenly the Mesmer's advantage has just been decimated.
Well, I didn't think about that at the time. It was quite, in the moment of it all. But it was really interesting. It ended up with the Mesmer actually running away from me, just teleporting out because he managed to lure me off with this.
They are generally quite good at that. But I think they have changed it so you can't if you put a target over one Mesmer, it would come up over its clones.
Fair enough.
One thing that I did a 1v1 against a Guardian, and he clearly hadn't worked out that the way that the classes work in Guild Wars 2, like everyone can be up close. So he kept using an ability to pull me up towards him, and I had a dagger out and just stabbed him lots because as a necromancer I look like a cloth class.
Yeah. Having everything be ranged and close is definitely an interesting way of doing it. Requires you to think about things more.
Yeah, everyone's good at close and far off. That is pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, like, wow, you can kind of see, clothy, pull him in, right there, that's on a chance now. But it's just a nice thought that you switched out in midair and just stabbed him in the face.
There was, I think, the most fun I had in combat at any point over the beta weekends was in World v World, where I ended up as a melee ranger against another melee ranger. We had the same main hand, which was sword, and I don't know if any of you have seen, but a melee ranger with a sword main hand, they move so much with their abilities, and that combat was just blisteringly fast and awesome in every way.
I found when I went one-on-one with another necromancer, because of the Death Shroud ability, where you gain life force by using your abilities and when things died, and the fact that we both had quite a few minions, we just get life force so much life force and then get Death Shroud, that we could soak up each other's attacks just with that, and it just ended up being cancelling each other out.
But going back to your earlier point, Alex, on it looking like you being a necromancer and someone thinking, we'll just get him up close because then I'll get the advantage. It does add something of a confusion as to what you want to do in the fight.
It requires you to think on your toes quite a bit.
Yeah, that's all it is. You'll catch them off guard, so they'll pull them in, and for that a second, if they haven't been concentrating completely, they'll have a ranged weapon right in front of you.
Yes, but it also adds confusion because as a ranger, I could go, for example, skirmishing, which is switching between melee and ranged, or marksmanship, or beast mastery. I mean, you can tell a beast mastery ranger because their pet's still alive, because, my god, pets die so damn quickly. But it'd be really hard to tell from any kind of distance whether the ranger wants to be up close or wants to stay at range. And I don't know, is that a good thing? Or is it a bad thing in terms of how hard it is to figure this kind of thing out?
Yeah.
I think the later on, when there is actually a PvP metagame, people will have got used to it so much that it will be a lot more. It will be a lot easier.
I mean, actually, you could pull them down from a ledge with it, couldn't you? Someone's up high.
I'm not sure actually, because there is some things with how abilities work with AZ axis, my staff abilities still work if I put them on higher up things, which is incredibly funny when people are inside a keep and standing on the edge. But there's several abilities like my teleport which won't work.
Well, did you say that the guy pulled you to him? He did,
Yes.
didn't he? Well, okay, imagine you're taking on a keep. A guy jumps down up top. He's a bit cocky, you know, so he does a few hits and tries to run back in. Just as he's getting to the entrance bit, pull him off. Slaughter him.
It's another one of the abilities that is considered situational, and it was the wrong situation to use it in.
Which goes back to the idea that the combat isn't just button mashing whenever something comes off cooldown.
You said you went Necromancer v Necromancer. I went Guardian v Guardian at one point, and I don't know what spec this guy was, but he wouldn't die. He would take no damage, and he was giving me absolutely loads. And he had a shield as well. So he had a shield, a sword, and he was putting out so much damage and just not going down at all. His health
Possible it was a
budge.
level advantage.
It could have been.
Guardians OP, nerf them immediately.
Mesmer versus Mesmer was just really dull because there's just two people running away from each other all the time. Okay, I hit this guy. That's a illusion. He hit my illusion. I hit his illusion. That just kept bouncing between that for ages until somebody could out illusion
I just imagine 30 people who all look like one of two people just all stood together.
I imagine that if it kept like that, you'd walk past another Mesmer, an enemy one, you just wouldn't bother. You'd just be like, alright, yeah, alright, keep going.
What if you in PvP, you made 5 people who all look exactly the same and they were all Mesmers?
Oh god.
You
I
nailed.
think this needs to happen. I think this needs to happen, guys.
Actually, that would be quite interesting.
Or
That'd be
Never
very
play a
interesting.
Mesmer.
why not? Something I found for the Mesmers was that each of the weapon set were just completely unrelated to any other. There was no remote similarities. There was one which was just giving support, random debuffs. No, they called boons and I can't remember the other one. Boons and
Conditions.
boons and conditions. Just throwing them out, random people, random boons and conditions all the time. And then there was another one which was all about confusing and creating really good what they called phantasms. And then there's 2 daggers, I think, which are your melee option. And then there's also the greatsword, which is just all about keeping the enemy up far away and creating massive laser beams.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
It's the whole build is set around keeping your distance, because if you hit them at 20 yards compared to 30 yards, it'll hit less. So you want to keep them far away and then hit them with your lasers.
But that's when the pulling them in would be good then, wouldn't it?
Pulling them in if they're trying to keep you away is good, but then if they had a dagger in their other hand, then suddenly they've got the advantage again, or the disadvantage has been removed.
I'd like to mention, we said about, in World v World, the 2 Zergs, say a Zerg meets another Zerg, interesting things. We did have that, didn't we? Do you remember we were running around?
Yeah.
Well, at least we had us two, us and Elona Reach, obviously, were attacking. And then out of nowhere, the 3rd world came in, and that was pretty interesting. It was like a triple army thing.
I wasn't there at the time, but that must have been incredible.
Incredibly confusing.
I also feel
Unfortunately,
sorry for your processors because of the amount of particle effects happening at the time.
There do seem to be sometimes when there's a lot of people doing it, particle effects can become overwhelming. I think somebody over the internet has said it's something they've noticed, because they are very pretty, but having a load at once is a bit over the top.
I think it's because they hadn't had World vs. World run properly before, and when there was 60 people, there was a lot of particle effects.
I mean, I imagine with more middle-end computers, because we all have quite good ones, more middle-end ones are going to have some serious issues with it.
Yeah, I mean, as well, because I play Guardian, I can buff everyone. What's that fire thing? I make everyone's hit do fire damage. So when I press that, everyone suddenly sets on fire who's hitting someone else. That causes even more. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it looks nice, and the thing is that each particle effect is, for example, all the combo field fires, for example. It has to be obvious that there's a combo field fire there.
Yes, I agree with that.
But if everything has to be obvious, then it just gets drowned out with the amount of things that are trying to be obvious.
There's a lot of times when the same ability was used repeatedly. Like, there was once when we were trying to attack a keep, and there was must have been 10 rangers, and they were all using the barrage ability with the longbow, and it was like that scene in 300 where blot out the sun with our arrows.
Then I will shoot you back in the shade.
Should we start moving and start talking about the new races available in the next beta weekend? The plant people of Savari and the little Asura people.
I don't know if I'll be playing one of
do a
them.
segue. Oh. Speaking about things that are blotting out the sun, how about that pale tree, huh?
Speaking of things that are blocking out the sun, how about those Asura guys? They're really tall.
Yeah, except they aren't.
Savari with their plant trees and the Asura with their techno-Aztec shit.
And he is.
The Aztec shit is not Asuran. The Asurans moved into ruins that looked like Aztec shit.
Well, it seems like they've taken it on because, Ratasum, the entire thing is Asuran created, and it does look pretty Aztec.
Wait, have you seen Ratasum in Guild Wars 2?
Yeah.
Huh.
We saw that ages ago, 2 years ago.
Well, I'm terrible at keeping up with news.
On the subject of that, there's a Guild Wars 1 expansion coming out. No, there isn't.
It's a pretty big expansion.
So are you guys going to play the new races or not?
I've always wanted to make a Sylvari since I learned about the race back in Guild Wars 1. But what's grown on me recently is having human characters as the legacy from my Guild Wars 1 characters. So I'm kind of trapped in a weird area where I want to make Sylvari, but I want them to be linked to my Guild Wars 1 through something other than me.
Well, in the same way, I've always found the Sylvari the most interesting, especially lore-wise, but also in terms of their aesthetic. I want to customise a Sylvari a lot. So one thing I will be doing in the beta is making a Sylvari and seeing what I can make with it.
Some of the hairstyles are surprisingly interesting. There's some really different ones. There's a ponytail coming from a twig.
Yeah, it seems like the hairstyles for the Sylvari are half of them are hair replicated but with plants, and then the other half are actual plants, so branches but with leaves on, and that's your hair.
There's one of them which is thorns all over the head.
Yeah, it's not quite Darth Maul, but I'd like that.
I don't think I'm going to play either of them, to be honest. Just in the beta, at least. I mean, I can totally see myself playing Sylvari in the main game, I don't know, a Mesmer or something, but I don't know if I want to. I think I'll keep that story and then discover it then.
Well, yeah, one of the things, my plan for this one is to not play a Sylvari, but just customise one. Maybe watch the cutscene at the start, but I will want to play an Asura because I want to try them out, kind of. And I also want to try out Mesmers, because I was looking at which classes should be my alt, because Elementalist has fallen out of favour with me after I tried it.
What did you find distasteful about it?
Well, one of the things I really liked about the Necromancer was switching out weapons, and I had the longest range weapon and the shortest range weapon, and then jumping in and out and switching up the weapons and using all the abilities was really quite fun. But as the Elementalist, I just had a ton of abilities where about 60% of them felt the same. It's like whenever I switched to water attunement, it was for a heal ability, and then I'd just auto attack because none of the others were useful.
I see what you mean.
I only played a couple of hours of the Elementalist. I'm fairly interested in that being my second in my ult. But I always found that the switching attunements was it felt odd compared to the switching weapons.
I imagine it feels different at later levels where you get like really good effects from regularly swapping your attunements. So
it doesn't change that much because it's still just the weapon. There is some stuff to do with your utility skills, it seems. I only unlocked one of the utility skills, I think. But yeah, it was really strange. It seemed like, especially some of the time, I was switching attunements for the effect that happened when I switched the attunement rather than the actual abilities, which seems wrong.
Well, as a skirmisher ranger, you gain swiftness when switching weapons. So, I don't know, maybe that's intended.
Well, the advantages to switching weapons on the Necromancer was just it changed how you played in the scenario, and it was very situational. But on the Elementalist, it was like, okay, I'm dropping stuff on the floor. This is with the staff. Dropping stuff on the floor and using an auto attack and then got some AoE. Oh, well, I should switch to another attunement now. I can drop stuff on the floor, use an auto attack, or do an AoE.
They said their design philosophy for it was that it would encourage you to regularly switch between the attunements, but not penalise you if you wanted to. Not penalise you too much if you wanted to stick.
I would have liked the attunements to feel different rather than... So it seems like they're the same abilities but with a different twist on them. I would have preferred it if they were straight up different abilities.
Did you ever get around to unlocking the Earth attunement?
Not all of it, I don't think. Well,
That
actually,
one looks
which
quite
weapon?
Any weapon, because what I'd always expected the whole attunement switching to be is that you switch to, for example, Earth for defensive skills when it's basically your turn to tank, and then you get away and maybe put a couple of combo fields, fire combo fields down for people shooting through them, and then maybe switch to air to deal some damage. I don't know, but that's how I've always imagined it should play.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I felt it should play. But the problem was, so I'd be with a dagger, and that would be like the way you tank with an elementalist, dagger and earth attunement. But it's like, oh, I'm getting hurt now. Switch to water attunement. Oh, I need to be still auto-attacking up near close to him, and I can't do that without getting aggro. So I've got to jump back and just stop attacking. That seems really odd to me. Whereas on my Necromancer, I'd be up stabbing somebody with the dagger, and then jump back, switch to my staff, and heal up, and still be throwing things against him.
But when the when the Elementalist is doing the tanking, I don't think they're just meant to stand there and take the damage. They're meant to use their various slowing effects.
Yeah, the way that classes tank is pretty universal the same way, it seems.
Yeah,
Is it?
It's dodging. You don't tank. You don't just pure health tank. You evasion tank.
Yeah, the difference with my Guardian when I switch weapons seemed a lot to be the buffs I give to my allies.
Well, wasn't there an element of range to it as well? Because with the Guardian, you could have a sword and then staff, and those could be different weapons.
Well, I had sword and shield. It was one, the staff, so it was range. But it was that. It was about where my allies are as well. So the sword shield, I'm meant to be up close, but I press 4, whatever that was. I don't remember, but I buff all my allies around me. Actually, now I remember I give them a defensive buff and me. But when I'm with my staff, I give myself and other people swiftness or something. So that's when I'm doing ranged, I give boons that will be good to ranged people, it seems. And when I'm up close in there, all the people that are also up close in there with me seem to get a little boost.
Going back to what Ben said a few minutes ago. Like, do all the classes, tanking aspects, they all have some form of a unique part to it, how they do it differently?
The way that you essentially tank in Guild Wars 2 seems to be that you'll switch to a melee weapon, run up to the guy and start dealing as much damage as possible. He will then turn and face you and start hitting you. Now, most classes have some sort of ability that can like stop the damage or somehow prevent it. The Necromancer's is draining life and so getting life back. But at a certain point, you're going to run out of life. Now, in say WoW, once you're out of life as a tank, that's kind of it. But that's not the point in Guild Wars. If you manage to go through an entire fight tanking and still have life left, then you majorly outlevel the fight. So,
but you can't outlevel the fight, really, can you? Because you're just
not really, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Then it's probably broken. But anyway, when you're down on life, you will dodge back, and then someone else needs to be in melee range, and the boss will aggro him based on proximity. Now, once you jump back, the thing you would normally do is switch to a range weapon and then start attacking. And then because your heal just has a cooldown, you can just basically spam your heal as soon as it comes off cooldown, and eventually you'll get your health back, and that other person might be running low on life, and then you switch.
Yeah, the two classes I've looked at for is it the control support, the control part of it. Elementalist, it seems to be like going water and then trying to kite them. Sometimes that seems to be a way to do it. And then with the Mesmer, creating various illusions which take the damage instead of you, while the boss tries to catch up with you.
It seems like everyone has a way of doing it,
like a unique way to do it.
I don't know what my way is.
Unique.
I get to block every now and again, don't I? Because I've got, is it Aegis?
Yeah,
and the next attack will block.
And you've got that ability that like pushes them back.
Yes, I do. That's correct. But yeah, it is about switching. It's like I'll go there, use all my defensive abilities, take as much damage as I can, obviously dodge a few times, then dodge out of there, get out of there as someone comes in, takes over from me. It maybe alternates around a few people, and eventually I'll go back in there and carry on, and then it'll keep going.
One of the interesting specs of the Mesmer is every time you use any dodge or block whatsoever, you get a new illusion. So it really encourages you to make sure you dodge the attacks which are incoming.
Well, one thing about the minion master, almost, I do say almost because at the moment I don't have that many minions, is that the trait system, the one that you go in to be able to get more minions, is actually the health one. So rather than using your minions to throw in the way, as you might expect, the trait means that you throw yourself in the way, and then the minions are like your backup.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit hurt. Schlop.
But I don't know if anyone else has found that with their traits. Because I haven't looked into the other.
I don't know. I went almost support with my traits. It's like whenever I'm reviving someone, I instantly get a shield around me, like a defensive bubble kind of thing.
From the knowledge I had so far, my phantasms were the strongest part of my class, so I put my traits into the talents which seemed to, the traits which would buff them most.
Well, I don't even know what to pick. I mean, I had.
It's not very obvious, is it?
No, well, it's how you want to play. I mean, I could play support or I could play more damage, but I really haven't got a clue. I mean, the Lazy Guardian is the one that puts into all. Your boons last longer, and you get additional bonuses when you activate them. So when you buff the party, you keep the ability. Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, there is a lot to look at.
When I was playing on the Ranger, I respect a couple of times. It was very much dependent on how you want to play. For example, you've got the Skirmisher, which I talked about earlier, where you jump in and out and switch weapons to gain swiftness and stuff. Then you've got the Marksman, which stays in range. And you've got the Beastmaster, whose sole purpose is to keep the pet alive. And then you've got other stuff like Wilderness Survival, which has changed from Guild Wars 1. It's the most that's changed. And it now seems to be all about conditions and applying debuffs to the target. And what I found is that I could just increase the amount of condition damage I did massively and use support skills to aid this. And that's just the playstyle that I felt worked best.
Well, one thing that I think is I believe I got the highest level amongst everyone here because I got to 37, and once you get a certain amount of traits, it's I think 40 that you can unlock putting more than 5 points into any one of the traits, and that means you have to have filled 3 of the trait things. And this kind of means that speccing into one of them isn't really possible. You kind of have to make a mix of them, which was weird so I instantly went for the one that gave me minions, because that's what I wanted to do, and then I had to go into other things, so there was like multiple elements to my spec. It was weird.
I think I worry about slightly is like some of the specs in Mesmer kind of just do the exact opposite. That there's one of the specs which buff all your phantasms, and then there's one of the specs which buff whenever you shatter any clones or phantasms, which you don't want to do if you've got really good phantasms out. Too experienced with like that kind of talent system, we just go with ones which look pretty and then end up with like a really like badly designed spec.
But I think in that example, you can't think of it like you're using a rotation like in WoW. You've got to think of situational stuff. So you might have really amazing phantasms, but there's a time where they're going to get attacked, oh god, and you shatter them, and because you've got the bonus shatter thing, it helps. It could be just that little bit that helps in a situation.
Yeah, in that situation, that's a good idea. But obviously, the Mesmer's flaw is if you have 2 clones and a phantasm, and then summon another clone, which is very often done by your auto attack, then your good phantasm just goes and is replaced by something which does 0 damage.
Yeah, I've heard you say this. It does seem like something that would be at the forefront of their mind, and I kind of want... This is one of the reasons that this is the first example of something like that I've heard, so I want to play Mesmer in this beta weekend to kind of test out what you're saying, Hayden.
It seems to be only with certain weapon sets, like the Greatsword was completely different from any of the others. It didn't really touch too much on the illusions as much, so that one didn't really have the issue, which is why that one probably stood out compared to a lot of the others.
Yeah, I have heard that the Greatsword was the best weapon for the Mesmer.
Why would you play anything else? You've got a giant freaking sword that shoots lasers.
Yeah.
The others have really good phantasms.
Lasers!
Yeah, but it doesn't shoot freaking laser beams from its freaking head.
You can mount it on your head.
The lasers come from the sword. It's a laser sword.
Head-mounted laser sword.
Just running around. God, my neck hurts. This sword is massive.
Like having massive lasers come out from your horn, like a unicorn.
It's because Hayden is embarrassed about being a unicorn, so he just can't show off his horn in public.
Horn, eh?
He often wears like a beanie hat over it.
The worst part is it's incredibly obvious when I fart because just a massive rainbow appears. Like, oh god.
I'm struggling to think of a way to segue this into having fewer servers, but I just did a segue into having fewer servers. So, what do people think of having fewer servers?
Good.
Do we have fewer servers?
There are going to be fewer servers.
I hadn't heard this one.
But they are going to be bigger servers.
Hopefully you'll have an even number of people doing the World v World part. And, it's nice because on other MMOs, you'll be there and there's loads of people around you in your area, stealing my mobs, bitch. But whereas in Guild Wars 2, if people are doing that, they kill it. It's like you've killed it, so you want other people around you. There's not really a negative to it.
No, one thing that I've found is that there's plenty of times when there's been people around me, but it doesn't feel like there's people around me because all they are to me is basically damage. So I'll be doing a heart quest and I'll need to kill some dudes, a certain number of them, and then someone will turn up and start killing dudes with me, and I won't talk to them or just acknowledge what they look like. They're just like, oh, there is a thing helping me, and I would like to have to communicate with them.
I disagree with that.
Well, yeah, you would, wouldn't you? But
Yes.
actually, now you mention it, it doesn't exactly feel like you're with them. I mean, I have seen people down, run over to them, res them, and they'll get up and go on their way. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
Feel a bit strange.
would like. I think one thing is that the kind of what's the word? The polite things that you're meant to do depicted by society.
Manners.
Yeah, it's like they haven't been worked out yet. I remember when we played WoW, there were things that you were just supposed to do, and like there was what certain emotes meant, and you kind of learnt this. But in Guild Wars, that kind of thing hasn't been worked out yet. So it's possible that it becomes a thing that you thank people if they just randomly resed you. Otherwise, it's rude not to.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I resed someone, I'd expect a thank you.
Yeah.
If I didn't get one, I'd be really annoyed. It's like, if I could kill you, I would. I would kill you right now.
Okay, that might be a bit far.
I would kill them until they were dead.
And then I would res them again, and if they
Just
didn't
to
thank
kill
me, I would kill them again.
Seeing how the Guild Wars 2 community, I have good feelings about it because in other games, their community hasn't been it's a bit negative in parts. While I think Guild Wars 2 so far seems very positive.
Well, one thing I think about the community is that the thing that attracts people to Guild Wars 2, and that attracted me, and I think most of us here, is that it's the mechanics and like the evolution of the game. So it's like there's clever bits of the game. So the people who are impressed by that come and play it, but the people who are like, what's the raiding content like? Or, well, it seems like there's less stuff to grind, or it's a longer grind. And those people don't have any reason to come to it.
They'll stick to ones which have which are more dedicated to that, like Rift or World of Warcraft.
Which I think is actually a good thing. Not because I don't want the people there, though I may not want the people there, but if you can get like tons of MMOs that cater for tons of different people, that makes everyone happy. We'll probably end up referring to it as the dark ages of MMOs, when WoW was king and there was just nothing that could knock it off the top spot. Everyone had to play WoW, whether they really liked the way it worked or not.
So you're saying that people will get along because everyone's there for the same reason.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Peace and love.
I kind of don't want it to become the WoW killer, because then it will end up like WoW was, and there's just everyone there regardless.
I don't think it'll be a WoW killer because it doesn't directly compete with it. It's like a side raid.
But I think that's the way that you do almost beat WoW, and by beat I mean make something that makes money. So you could beat it by making something that is exactly the same as WoW, but slightly better. But the problem with that is WoW's been going for so long and everyone's so invested in it that you can't actually make something that's better than it, because that element will always be missing.
And also good luck coming up with 7 years of raiding content on launch.
But
on the element of it being successful, like the numbers so far are like really varied. Some people saying it's around 300,000 copies, some people saying 3 million. So once we get the numbers from ArenaNet, we'll have a good idea of like where the game is like successful on launch.
Oh, we could see how many people were playing in the beta weekends, and it was over 1 million.
The recent beta weekend has obviously got a pretty hefty number of just general beta weekend keys, but the previous ones I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, this one, it seems like there's a ridiculous amount given out. Like, every website that had a little thing to do with MMOs was saying, we've got 200 beta keys.
I'm pretty sure they're doing this to encourage people to get in the game. It's them having an open beta without actually having an open beta.
Yeah, it seems more like a stress test, really. Because what I was saying earlier about them wanting to simulate the start of the game, this kind of contributes to that.
Well, yeah, if you've got a beta key, you'll want to use it, won't you?
No, because the start of the game is 3 days after all the pre-order people get in. So, I don't know, it will be something of a ramp up.
Well, the thing is, this actual start of the game, the actual release, I think that's going to be pretty quiet.
I suspect a lot of people will have pre-ordered it who are planning to get it.
The actual release of the game is going to be 3 people like, oh, I saw this in GameStop.
Why can't I get the name which I want?
This is going to be a bigger beta than this next one, the third one.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah, well, so far, like, I was able to get hold of a few keys, and the Curse were just throwing them at people.
Yeah. The thing that surprised me was that there was people who wanted keys, because I was under the impression that everybody who wanted the game had bought a copy or managed to get a key through something else. But it seems like there's tons of people who need to play the game to like be sure whether they want to buy it or not.
I had quite a few of my friends and people I know were really interested in it, but hadn't got around to buying or like playing it yet.
Yeah, I imagine as you go along, obviously it gets more popular, people become more aware of it, so they'll be like, oh, it does sound good, I'd like to try that. Beta key, there you go, have a go. So I reckon there'll be a lot more people on release.
If you look, they're not just didn't just give the beta keys at like MMO websites. It's like this beta weekend is to try and get it more mainstream, like increase its mainstream appeal.
Yeah, that definitely seems like it.
I would say it's already fairly mainstream as a phenomenon.
I mean, maybe even outside the MMO market.
Yeah, because I think at the moment their community is made up of MMO veterans, whether that is WoW or not. But they did make a point. I remember their manifesto saying, if you hate MMOs, you will really want to check out Guild Wars 2.
It does seem very different to like any other MMO product out there at the moment.
Yeah, but I'm just going to mention the idea of the head start. That is a very good idea. I mean, do you think it will put a lot less stress,
Not at all.
Actually, it won't, will it?
Because it's 99% of the people who are going to buy the game are going to be there at the head start, and then there'll be 1% of people, as I said, the 3% who've gone into a shop and seen the game and be like, oh, that's pretty in white, bought it, and then like, oh, there's no one here.
I don't think it'll be quite like that.
No, there will still be people there, but it'll be
99%. I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I imagine it would. You go to your friend's house, you see he's on a game, like just after release. I imagine it's a big bustling world because everyone's already been in for 3 days, and you know what people can do in 3 days. So
I tied my room in less than 3 days.
Wow, very very good work.
Well, the beta weekend so far have only been 3 days, and I've managed a lot in that time.
Yep. What are we doing next time? What will you be doing in the next one?
Well,
I've already said my plans for the races, but apart from that, I think it's going to be situational. Whether people want to go on some PvP, World vs World stuff.
I'm not sure what I want to do, like how to level and do the content, but I'm planning to do a Elementalist because I did a Mesmer in the previous beta weekend to get a good idea of on release which class I want to play, because I'm still not 100% sure.
Well, one of the things I think about World vs World is that it's kind of perfect to play in the betas, because I can understand people not wanting to spoil the almost single player content for themselves, but the World vs World is multiplayer, and it's not just multiplayer, it's multiplayer that we have very little experience in, so practice is going to be necessary, and this is the perfect time to practice, and then you can restart and then make a completely different spec or whatever, or even choose a different class because you didn't like the one you played.
Yeah, I can see myself sitting around doing World v World again. I mean, that's what I did in the last ones. But I'm not sure. I feel like I almost should cover the content because it is a beta. That's what they want me to do. But go through all the single player bit. But I can see myself I'll probably make a warrior, actually, because I'd like to test the other melee class, or main melee class, a lot of weapon switching.
Yeah. And,
try him in World v World as well so I can practice it.
I'm looking to, as I said, play the Elementalist, but I also want to give the Thief another try. I tried it in the previous beta weekend and was not a fan, but I would really want to give that a second try.
Well, cool. I feel they'll have rebalanced a lot and changed it, my Guardian had huge changes to it. in the second. So I'm thinking that might also be why they've redone all the characters. It's like they've done such big changes. They want everyone to start from scratch, see if the changes, see if it all feels normal now.
Well, I might surprise you with my plans for new characters in that I want to make a non-warrior. Because I was looking at the classes and taking into consideration that I tried the Elementalist and I didn't like the lack of weapon switching, I was looking at which I'd enjoy, which had the 2 weapon switching idea, which is most of them.
Warrior mainly.
Yeah, it was the Warrior was the one that out of all of them I think I'd enjoy. And also